So what's going on, guys? We're back again. This is actually the very first video of 2019, and I love 2019 because you kind of look at it. It's like a new year to do big things. It's a new year to reset the bad things you've done, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of just a fresh go, and every time you get a fresh go, it feels refreshing. Best word to go. And this episode, we got a banger, so we're continuing the trend of the channel, which was we're going through the things that happened in 2018. We're doing a bunch of recaps, weight classes, the days. This is episode 5 of the Ultimate Recap 2018 edition, and this episode's actually going to be a banger. We have an absolute war between two beastly middleweights. We're going to talk about arguably one of the biggest events in the UFC this year. It's not the biggest event, but arguably one of the biggest events. This summer was always a massive time in the UFC, and we're going to get to see why in this episode. If you're enjoying the series so far, feel free to hit that subscribe button to see more. We release content as much as we possibly can. Drop a like if you like the series, and comment on any vid you possibly can. I love the discussions from this kind of stuff, continuing discussions with as many people that would like to. But with a packed couple events, I want to get straight into this video. Enough of this talking, and we're starting in the order of the 4 events. But we're going to touch on the pay-per-view last. So we're going to start with the UFC Fight Night. We had Cowboy Cerrone versus Leon Edwards, Cowboy's second main event of the year. Again, on a Fight Night card, but nonetheless, Cowboy is always getting to fighting, and he's always a main event slot. Now, this main event is this fight, and this show is one of the must-sees in 2018. If you want a good fight, this is one you want to watch, especially if you're willing to explain some of the stories being built and you want to see a charismatic superstar in Cowboy Cerrone, and then a kid that doesn't usually talk that much but is on his way trying to come to the top. So we have another British superstar, and he's hot on the tracks of Darren Till. He's been calling out Darren Till, and it would be a great opponent to see Darren Till fight, but we'll see later. And then it was also part of the trends where we're seeing guys fighting fighters that have lost to the fighter they want to fight. So Darren Till had beat Cowboy already. Leon wanted to do it more convincingly, but there's no more decisive way than how Darren Till did it. But nonetheless, Leon played the point of, I want to get this win. I'll beat Cowboy up worse than Darren Till did, and I'm going to show you guys why I'm the next superstar in this division. And they also played the storyline of Cowboy passing his prime, is what the argument is, that he's getting older. He doesn't have the same push that he's had to fight. And that was the story going into this fight. However, a little side note going into the fight, Cowboy was in contention for the most finishes and wins in UFC history in this fight. And going on into 2018, he does it. But in this fight, he doesn't get this done. But it just showed athletically, Cowboy ain't done. He's not finished. This is not going to be the last year we see Donald Cowboy Cerrone. And it showed in the fight that both men have a ton of heart. The fight went to a unanimous decision. That may not have been the way Leon wanted to finish the fight with Cerrone. I think he probably wanted to do it by finish the way Darren Till did it. But he didn't get it, but a win still nonetheless, and a war that many of people would want to watch. And although Cowboy didn't capture the title of most wins in UFC, he definitely demanded the respect of the talent in the welterweight division. And this moment in 2018, for me, just magnified the legacy that Cowboy is forever going to leave on the UFC. Throughout the card, we also saw Tyson Pedro was submitted by OSP. This was coming off of Tyson Pedro's big win on that card we touched on. I think it was in February, the one that Whitaker was supposed to face Rockhold on. But Tyson Pedro gets his momentum halted by OSP. OSP finishing Pedro, and then Jessica Ai debuts at flyweight, and she's going to start making some waves towards the end of the year, winning a decision over the fighter that defeated Paige Van Zant earlier in the year that we looked at in Jessica Rose Clark. So Jessica Ai is making a statement for the top of the flyweight division. And then the next middle 2 pay-per-views show, we had the Ultimate Fighter finale. The Ultimate Fighter was between the heavyweight combatants scheduled for the following pay-per-view, and that's the one we're going to move straight into. That's the one we're going to touch on in the end of this video. Before we touch on that, we want to touch on UFC 225, which was an amazing fight card with an amazing main event. Early in the year, obviously, we touched on this. Romero stepped up and solidified the fact that he is the #1 contender. He is the next fight for Robert Whitaker. And that was in the fight where he finished Luke Rockhold. However, the looming questions still were there about Romero's age and the fact that he's having issues making the weight. And this was the issue leading up to the weigh-ins. And as was expected and as was feared for Romero, Romero ends up missing weight for the event by 1 pound at the initial time, and still couldn't cut the 1 pound in the extra time, coming in 0.2 pounds over, which is peanuts, but still could not make the weight. And going onto the scale, Romero looked super drained, and it was a scary, scary sight. But that goes into Fight Night. Now, however bad Romero looked on Fight Night, he returned to form. He looked amazing, and even Whitaker pointed out the fact that when he was going into weigh-ins, he looked horrible, and when he went into the fight, he looked amazing, where Whitaker was like, man, this guy has to be on something. But nonetheless, we got an amazing fight. I went in cheering for Whitaker, and I think due to the fact that I was cheering for Whitaker, I actually gave Whitaker these same scores that the judges did over Yoel Romero. But damn, it's hard not to consider some of the rounds and the things that Romero did not to be 10-8 rounds or not to give Romero the win, because fight-wise, if I was going to say this fight goes on for another 2 or 3 rounds, the way that Romero was fighting, unless he drastically slowed, I thought Romero was closer to finishing the fight and stuff like that. But the thing is, I still gave Whitaker the same rounds as the judges, but the rounds 3 and 5, as I said, could have been 10-8 for Romero, but in the end, the decision was decided on, and it was lived upon. Not much. There was a little bit of controversy in the following month, but in the UFC, we just have to get over it. We just have to go on with the result of the fight, and we saw the winner being Robert the Reaper Whitaker. So then I thought that what I would think after this fight is Romero definitely deserves a rematch, but then you got to look at what has happened leading up to this fight. Romero's already fought Whitaker twice, losing both times. So are we really going to give Romero another shot at the championship? The only thing that I think Romero could really fight with is the fact that, man, both those fights were so close. But that's not going to end this card. The main event was not the end-all, be-all for this card. We had some good fights and some stories coming into the rest of the card, and the rest of the card stayed as stacked as the main event. We saw RDA take on Colby Covington for the interim welterweight championship. The interim welterweight championship. RDA coming off of a victory in 2017 over former champion Robbie Lawler, and all the media outlets, everybody around the world in the UFC, were talking about how RDA is making a resurgence in this division. He looks fresher, he looks better putting on the extra weight, but Colby was making a serious campaign on the other side with the fact that he was being the exact opposite. He was calling out people, simple memes, and basically went on everything, on anything that's controversial. In this one, Colby actually put on a relentless pace, and in the eyes of me, and I think the eyes of many more, we all thought that Colby would be getting the next shot. Colby's going to be the next title contender, and it's going to be hard to deny Colby a shot at Tyron Woodley. He took some of the damage in the fight. He caught a couple punches that I don't think he really should have. Punches that may have finished some other people, but Colby, he's got a decent little chin on him. Took some damage, but the decision was unanimous. Colby Covington, the King of Chaos, is coming for that belt. And then we get all the craziness that happens, but we'll go over that as it goes. Then we also saw the debuting Megan Anderson, who came into the UFC, from what I remember, as the girl that was going to fight Cyborg, who was going to fill out the featherweight division and put a good fight on Cyborg. Being a striker that she is, Cyborg is also a striker. It's just a good matchup. But we actually saw Megan Anderson in the octagon against a different striker in Holly Holm, a proven UFC commodity, a proven UFC challenger for any division in any fight. But the thing was, Holly stepped up, took her down, beat her up for all 3 rounds, got the decision, and set up a future fight for Holly versus Cyborg, which was going to be an amazing fight that we will see. And even with this fact, I think it might not have been a decision. I think Holly might have finished Megan Anderson. But we'll move on, and then I'll come back and tell us if we did see that. But then on the rest of the card, we also had Tai Tuivasa beating Arlovsky in a fight that I thought Tai Tuivasa may have lost, but in Arlovsky fashion, Arlovsky has a bunch of close decision fights where you can't do anything. Tai Tuivasa carries the UFC 2018, his momentum throughout the year. Holly Holm did finish her by decision. That's what I did think. And then Anthony Smith began his run from here on, coming off of a loss to defeat Rashad Evans in brutal fashion, preparing for higher-end talent in his newly picked light heavyweight division. So now we're going to end off this video with UFC 226. And now up until this date in 2018, we actually saw this had to be the fight event of the year up until this point. They put an entire season of The Ultimate Fighter, the longest heavyweight win streak, the light heavyweight championship. So many different factors were going into this fight. And even the lingering John Jones rivalry. John Jones popped again. DC's coming out of that rivalry to try and take on the heavyweight champion. And he's moving on to bigger and better things for now. Other than that, this fight was made. It wasn't made on that much of a rivalry, more of just two dominant fighters in their respective divisions coming together for a true super fight. There wasn't much animosity. The two guys just seriously believed they were better than one another, and it made for some great press conference moments, some great media occasions. Just a good fight card. It was interesting to watch, and it definitely blew up some ratings for the UFC. Everyone knew the stakes of the fight and realized that they were watching some of the best go at it. One of the other stories, just to mention another story going into the fight, we had Cain Velasquez versus Stipe Miocic for the greatest heavyweight of all time. DC was coming in saying, man, I train with the best heavyweight. I put in rounds with the best heavyweight of all time. Stipe's just going to be another night, another day in the training camps for me. And to be honest, it's really the win for DC really staked the claim for Cain Velasquez being the greatness. And it was probably the most shocking moment of the year up until this time for me. I know I say all these moments, but it changes throughout the year. But this was pretty shocking, man. I did not expect Daniel to come out of the clinch, landing a massive hook, and finishing. He finished Stipe Miocic in the first round. If you would have thought that, I know that everybody in the fight were thinking Daniel's going to drag it out or Stipe's going to land the shot. But I thought Stipe had a better difference in the wrestling. I thought Stipe was a better wrestler than Cormier was a striker compared to the opponent, compared to DC, compared to Stipe. So I thought that the power would have lent itself to Stipe Miocic. Shockingly enough, like all UFC's things, Cormier showed he had power enough to knock out the heavyweight, one of the best heavyweights of all time, even though the chin was a little suspect in the Stefan Struve fight. Rest my case on that one. But Cormier showed that he had some power. He won the fight. If you watch it again, you might see some eye pokes that were pretty blatant. But DC won the fight. DC definitely staked the claim. I think they should do a rematch, but he staked the claim to be one of the best of all time, man. Nobody's going to do something like that where they're winning light heavyweight and heavyweight unless it's going to be DC's rival and arch nemesis, John Jones, doing the same thing. But we'll see. And throughout the rest of the card, we actually had more surprises. I saw Gokhan Saki made his debut as one of the best kickboxers of like this generation, world renowned. He steps into the octagon and gets KO'd in the first round by Khalil Roundtree, who shakes up the sport with a devastating finish, who is now to be watched throughout the UFC. Then we also had the co-main event, which was marketed as a heavyweight war between two beasts that even after the fact everybody thought was the biggest disappointment ever, worst heavyweight fight ever. I've heard from some spots. I think that was just from the fact that it was hyped up to be something as crazy as it was, but to be moved up to the co-main event because Holloway and Ortega couldn't meet there. This was another time Holloway had an injury or that concussion-like symptom. But still, this was hyped up to be a war of the beasts, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen like that. It was a pretty bad fight. Then, moving from a bad note to a good note, Showtime Pettis returns to form against Michael Chiesa, submitting Chiesa, who cried at the fact that he was missing weight. He went on about how he almost died trying to get into weight. He went out there. Chiesa got choked out, and this was a string of bad luck for Chiesa in 2018, as we know from the fact that he got pulled from a title fight, is from what he was arguing. But what can you do? And then we actually had another stacked fight between Paul Felder and Mike Perry, which was a massive war that went its way to a decision. Perry picking up a much-needed win in 2018. Sad part about the event was the fact that Max Griffin, who beat Mike Perry a little bit earlier in the year we touched on, was slotted on the prelims while Perry was slotted as the third fight. But that goes to show what exciting style and a personality that Mike Perry has. Also on the card, bro, we got to mention all the stuff. Also on the card, we had Paulo Costa defeating Uriah Hall in a fight that we really wanted to see. This could have been a main event in any fight night, any card like that. This was a good war. Both guys put caution to the wind for our entertainment. This was kind of the fight you probably would have wanted to see in Ngannou versus Lewis that we didn't get. But Costa picks up a finish, and a hard-fought finish in that, probably Costa's hardest win. Go back and watch this card. Seriously, this card was an amazing show. A lot of talent winning. Maybe skip over the co-main event, but maybe watch it because it was entertaining. It was funny to watch. I must say it was funny to watch, and it calmed everybody down before the main event, which we got, which was actually amazing. But yeah, no, that'll do it for this video. Next week, or next episode, we're not doing it weekly. Next episode, we're touching on a couple of fight nights, and we are we touching on anything? No, we're just touching on a couple fight nights. They're good fight nights, and then we'll be getting to closer and closer to UFC 229 and closer to the end of year. I did make a mistake in the middle of the video. I said Holly Holm lost to Cyborg after Megan Anderson. She didn't. She lost to Cyborg first, but Holly Holm still came out and dominated Megan Anderson. So I made a mistake there. But thank you guys so much for watching nonetheless. If I see you guys in the next video, it'll be awesome. But remember to leave comments, anything you guys like. But that'll do it for me. If you're watching in the day, have a great day. If you're watching at night, have a great night. And I will see you in episode number 6.